newest board member, Bill Goebel, voted to throw parents of school children under the bus on his very first vote.
To support equitable and inclusive education. Whereas the North Carolina State Board of Education is charged with providing a sound basic education for every student in our state, and whereas in 2006, Guilford County Schools created the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to ensure equity in the school system after a thorough analysis of GCS student data found that achievement outcome gaps were most profoundly noted around race and class. It also discovered that implicit biases existed that led to lower expectations for students from underrepresented groups. And in an effort to reduce these biases, the district began encouraging conversations about race. And whereas Guilford County Schools in 2018 adopted core values of diversity, empathy, equity, innovation, and integrity to demonstrate our commitment to ensuring equity and educational opportunities for all students. And whereas the North Carolina State Board of Education in 2020 passed a resolution to support equity in education, wherein it stated that research shows that the physical, emotional, and social health of students is inextricably linked to their academic achievement, while barriers to success for many children include systemic racism, poverty, poor health, unsafe environments, nutrition deficiencies, limited access to services and infrastructure needed to support their long-term health and safety that will ensure their access to a quality public education, resulting in rigorous academic attainment for every student.
Well, there you go, kids. You might as well just give up.
And whereas Guilford County Schools in 2020 established as its vision transforming learning and life outcomes for all students, and whereas the North Carolina State Board of Education in 2021 passed a new standard for teaching social studies that will include a more diverse perspective of history and added language for educators to teach about racism, discrimination, and the treatment of marginalized groups. And whereas the Guilford County Board of Education supports educators discussing the accurate and complex fullness of U.S. American history, and whereas the Guilford County Board of Education attests the 13th Amendment of 1865 abolished slavery, a system in which members of a particular race had, in fact, oppressed members of another race.
So, won't this cause black children to hate the white children?
And whereas the Guilford County Board of Education supports teaching about the Jim Crow era, in which a series of laws prevented African Americans from accessing rights such as voting or holding office, and whereas the Guilford County Board of Education recognizes that women were not granted the right to vote until 1920 under the 19th Amendment, and even then, African American and indigenous women were still routinely denied their voting rights. And whereas the Guilford County Board of Education supports the inclusion of guest speakers, experts, diversity trainers, and facilitators who have been active and vocal about manifestations of the structural racism that produces unequitable outcomes for all students into our instructional spaces. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Guilford County Board of Education urges the members of the North Carolina General Assembly to embrace equity as a framework that impacts students' academic success.
It will impact academic, but it will not be success.
And creates collaborative school and community relationships. And resolved that the North Carolina General Assembly fully fund the Leandro Plan to fulfill the state's constitutional obligation to provide a sound basic education for all children.
So there hasn't been any sound education before?
And resolved that the North Carolina General Assembly increase allocations to match recommended ratios for school psychologists, school social workers, and school counselors. And further resolved that the North Carolina General Assembly create a comprehensive, anti-racist, and inclusive curriculum for every school to improve learning and life outcomes of all students. And further resolved that the Guilford County Board of Education urges the members of the North Carolina General Assembly to oppose HB 187.
Move the resolution.
I have comments.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Linda?
I want to discuss why are bills like HB 187 being passed in a growing number of states.
You are so right. This is spreading across the United States right now.
Violations of parental rights, student rights, labeling students, placing guilt and burden on students based on sexual ideology, expanded sexual content is not in the best interest of students. And parents are fighting back. Our education system is losing academic ground on the world stage and needs to focus on the core correct instruction. In the context of family law, parental rights are the parents' rights to make important decisions and to take action on behalf of their child or children when it includes education, religion, and medical treatment. Parents have lost trust in the education system. The education system has not been transparent. The education system has gone beyond teaching academic core subject matter and stretched over into social ideology and expanded sexual content that parents feel is inappropriate and beyond the scope of the sound education. These bills are about protecting the rights of parents and students. You hear over and over again, we are not teaching critical race theory. However, the boards of education, National Association of Educators, the North Carolina Association of Educators, the Federation of Teachers have publicly stated they will teach critical race theory and critical pedagogy. Education leaders have minimized parent concerns by labeling their concerns a manufactured crisis. I believe the voices of these political organizations speak panorama surveys, which inquire about religion, socioeconomic status, political affiliation, sexual preference, etc. Who is utilizing this data and for what purpose? A student and students should not be addressed in any manner or singled out during a lesson that draws unwanted attention to them in a negative manner based on their physical or social traits. A main component of critical race theory is labeling human and social characteristics to identify and define victims and oppressor. CRT is not a basic component of education. It is a theology that college students choose to take and debate. Another subject area is teaching true history, costs as determined by age appropriate. Numerous speakers have spoken about the 1619 Project as history. However, historians have disputed the 1619 Project as factual history. Nicole Hannah-Jones tweeted, "I've always said 1619 Project is not history. It is work of journalism that explicitly seeks to change the national narrative and therefore the national memory. True history should not be about changing the national memory, but about learning the actually what happened without placing guilt or burden on a generation that is struggling to recover from the strains of COVID. Storytelling is a tenet of CRT. I was introduced to social emotional learning 6 years ago. Thought it supported teaching lots of great positive character traits. However, in June of 2020, the Collaborative of Academic Social Emotional Learning, CASEL, included critical race theory. The CASEL CEO, Karen Nemeny, advocated that SEL to motivate students to be equity activists. Parents that for years have trusted the education system to provide their students a sound basic education and became complacent in the oversight of their child's education. COVID drew back the curtain to the system that has expanded sexual content, social ideologies, and invested in promoting social activist parents starting to voice their concerns vigorously. The National School Board Association writes a letter to the Attorney General, Garland, indicating parents are becoming a problem at board meetings. And the Attorney General labeled parents domestic terrorists and enlisted the assistance of the FBI. Parents are fighting for their rights and their children. They want their children to have strong reading, writing, and arithmetic. They want factual history. They do not want their children labeled or taught to be activists. Our children are falling behind on the world stage. It is time to get back to strong academic, providing strong foundational education, and enabling students to reach their future goals. Laws like these are parents fighting back against a system focused on political activism.
So I've read through this resolution a couple times, and I've read through the law a gazillion times as well, or the proposed law, the House Bill 187. And I personally believe that absolutely we should be teaching our country's history, the good, the bad, the ugly. We need to know the accurate history of our country, and I think that as a nation, we've fallen down on that, absolutely, in the education system. And I think that's something that, we're working very hard to improve, and I love that. I also believe that we should be treating all of our students equitably and fairly. And it's my opinion that that is actually what House Bill 187 is attempting to do. It's looking and saying, we want to have equality, and we want to prohibit things that are going to go against the equality of students. Things like saying you can't promote as a public school that one race or sex is inherently superior to another race or sex. Well, that seems like a good thing to me. I don't think we want to be promoting that one race or one gender or one sex are better than another. So there are a lot of things in here. In general, I like this resolution, except for that last line about urging the General Assembly to oppose HB 187. If it wasn't for that line, I would be able to support what's here. But I do believe that the intent of HB 187 is to actually benefit our students and work towards more equality and less divisiveness.